What should we be avoiding when we are titling novels? What are the mistakes that our listeners do not need to make because we can warn them? What should they not be doing? Chris, what do you think?
I think it's always worth making sure that there is not another book with exactly the same name. A bit of preemptive Googling is always your friend. I think if there was a different book in a completely different genre that was published 12 years ago, you're probably fine. But there's so much published in the world these days. And not just books, actually, also sort of film and other things. Just do a little bit of due diligence and make sure that if somebody Googles your book title, they're not going to end up with a nasty surprise.
In terms of like your title overlapping other titles, or also potentially other like world events, things of that nature, yes, it will completely ruin your algorithm and your search and discoverability. 2-3 years ago, I finished a self-published novella that I released in conjunction with a interactive novel that I wrote with Choice of Games. But I was editing all 3,000 words of this novel at the same and completing and turning in my PhD at the same time that I was putting together this novella and releasing it. And I was supposed to call the novella A Conspiracy of Roses. But I was so tired that I typed into Amazon that the title was War of the Roses. Do you know just how hard it is to find one specific book with War of the Roses in the title? Terrible. I've literally just taken it down from Amazon because it is just languishing in like the deserts of obscurity beneath the carcasses of about 257 different self-published books on the history of the War of the Roses. And it was like, it's so obvious. But I was so tired. And I was just like, blah, I've made a grave error.
So, folks, don't title your novel after one of the most famous civil wars in English history.
There's probably like a search engine optimization aspect to this. Like, if someone else is ranking incredibly well for your title and you're never going to assail that position, that might not be the best title for you.
In general, people, especially writing in fantasy and science fiction, have the tendency to put one of their made-up words, like the name of a country or a kingdom or a character, something like that, in their title. Put it in the series title. Don't put it in the actual book title. What comes to mind immediately is Michael Sullivan's Area Chronicles. That's the name of the series. Theft of Swords is the name of the first book. Because everybody knows what a theft is and everybody knows what a sword is, right? Or maybe not. Also want to take a moment to say, when you are making up words for things, always give it the 12-year-old boy test. Say it out loud in front of a 12-year-old boy. If he immediately starts smirking or giggling, keep working on that made-up word.
There is also something to be said for nationalization. The word for organs of generation in some language is going to be more common language. So just be aware of that. It's amazing how many slang words in different languages there are for that particular noun set, particularly if they are languages that are well known in your country, like Spanish in America, for example. We've talked a lot about titling your novel with like genre appropriate titles. What happens when you don't do that?
I think it's less a thing to be cautious of than like perhaps doing cross-genre cover design, because we are a very visual species and you can shift words in very particular ways with even just like different color choices. You can trend different ways in terms of genre, subgenre, trope, trend, etc. But I think you should be aware of specific trends, as mentioned, particularly in terms of titles. Like, yeah, sure, right now, like Legends and Lattes or Bookshops and Bone Dust or like Pride and Prejudice, like those sorts of double-barrel titles with and in between could be a thing. But it's entirely possible that in 5 years' time or something, you do that and everyone's going to be like, oh my God, that's so 2022. Like with my book, it's A Market of Dreams and Destiny, but a thing is such a fantasy title format of about 2013, 2014. That format's very 10 years ago. And I still have it, and it still works just fine, but that is a concern. Your title construction will also ping different trends, and it will impact on different sensibilities in ways you won't expect.
There is an approach to series, which is having a clever approach to series book titles. Like, the night rose, the black rose, the glorious rose, the unexpected rose. This is the kind of format that people often have. Do we think this is something that can be very useful, or do we think it's something that is problematic? Kat.
My series is now titled Alchemy Ever After. I love that series title for it because it sells gaslamp fantasy and fairy tale retellings. That is not the original series title for it when it came out with small press. It came out as The Clockwork Republics, which wasn't a terrible title. It kind of piggybacked on Clockwork Century, but Clockwork reads as steampunk. Steampunk and gaslamp fantasy are similar but different genres. So it was a bit of a miscommunication, and also didn't do anything at all to sell the idea that these were all fairy tale retellings in a gaslamp fantasy world. In fact, I had one somewhat negative review who was like, it's a good story, but I really wish it had been an original story instead of a Snow White retelling. It says a Snow White retelling right on the cover. I could not have been clearer, guys. But to be fair, the series title could have been a little clearer. And Alchemy Ever After is going to tell you fairy tale 100% of the time.
I think unless you want to be very spicy, ignore naughty words. You will find people who are resistant potentially to buying your book. So
because they can't read it on the subway or the tube.
I think that's one to consider that people don't always think about.
I will say one of my co-writers from Spy Girls Kick Ass is in the comments right now, Leslie Tash, and she's calling everyone wimps because we did put ass in the title of Spy Girls Kick Ass. But you're not wrong. It did get some dings when we put it up on Kindle. We did take a little bit of an algo hit on it.
If you're titling a short story, when we were going through the slush pile for I Want That to Be Obliterated, there was one story with a filthy name that made Trip and I basically laugh for about 5 minutes solid. And in an anthology, you can get away with it because it's just in the table of contents. So, and I think we're fairly certain we're going to try and get it in. Go for it.
But this
carefully deployed in the right circumstances can work.
Yeah. But also, this is not a 5 chili pepper spice anthology. So we're sort of like, okay, we can have one.
If you are writing hardcore erotica, the rules are different, okay? Like, if you are writing adorable, soft, cozy fantasy, you do not follow the same rules. And I think knowing your audience is one of the most critical things in this whole process.